Taoiseach, the public health measures that have been introduced out of concerns about Omicron, social gathering at Christmas and so on, have once again impacted on particular groups of workers and sectors in our society in terms of their ability to work at all or their ability to earn a sustainable living. While the government have been quite laissez-faire, if you like, has just been referred to in terms of, and rightly in many ways, in giving out EWSS support to employers and other COVID support schemes, certain groups who've been hit again and again and again, the longest, the hardest and most repeatedly, are being frustrated or simply denied the income supports under the PUP that the government said they were reintroducing over the last few weeks, but in fact people are encountering major difficulties or being flat out denied. And they are, once again, the jobbing musicians, the entertainers, the performers, the taxi drivers and people in the nighttime economy. People are simply being refused the PUP in those categories on the spurious basis that there's no record of 4 weeks PRSI contributions, when in fact they do their tax at the end of the year and couldn't possibly show that, would have to go to an accountant to get it. People are being given lesser amounts on the PUP than they were given in March 2020. They're being told they have to come into appointments, but they may not get the appointments before Christmas. People who are working in exactly the same job, doing the same type of work, are being given different payments or none, or they are being told they will be paid, but not when they will be paid and how much they will be paid. Now this is completely unfair. This is the government being Scrooge on the people most affected by the public health measures in the teeth of Christmas. I mean, just to give you some examples. Daniel, taxi driver, applies for the PUP, told to come in for an interview, but he also has to get a PSC card and may not get his interview before Christmas. John, musician, rang the PUP helpline this morning. They couldn't clarify if I were being reinstated on the PUP, or they couldn't tell me what rate it would be paid at. Taxi driver, self-employed, applied for the PUP on the 7th, no word from welfare. It's less than 2 weeks to Christmas. Yesterday I spent 8 hours in a taxi rank and earned only €16.80. I had to keep my car going to keep myself warm. Shane, musician, self-employed, work had not returned to a level that I could survive on without support. Loads of gigs booked for Christmas period, all completely gone, refused the PUP. And I could go on through the list. This is just not fair, Taoiseach. So in the teeth of Christmas, I am appealing to the government to instruct the Department of Social Welfare to go back to the regime we had in March 2020, where people in these sectors who apply for PUP are given it and given it at the rate they were given in March 2020 and are not asked to jump through multiple hoops or denied that support before Christmas.
Taoiseach, please.
Thanks very much, Deputy, and I am sorry to hear about those stories. I know so many people who work in the nighttime economy, and they had been looking forward to a very different Christmas, one where they could do their job, practice their art, maybe make a little bit of money for Christmas and for the year ahead, and they now find themselves in a very difficult position. And certainly we want to make sure that those financial supports are in place for those people who work in the nighttime economy, in the experience economy, who are going to need them, because we're going to need them back whenever we get over this Omicron wave. And if you want to pass on those details to me later on or directly to my office, I'll make sure the Minister Humphreys gets them. I'll speak to her today and see if there are any particular flexibilities that we can reintroduce, because we don't want to leave people without any money for Christmas, for all the reasons that I think people understand in this House. As you'll be aware, the PUP has been reopened on a limited basis for individuals, including self-employed people, like people who work in the nighttime economy and taxi drivers, who lose their employment on or after Tuesday the 7th of December because of the additional public health restrictions. These measures have a negative impact on sectors like hospitality, the nighttime economy, the arts and entertainment sectors, and the loss of employment must be linked to those new restrictions. Individuals, including taxi drivers who satisfy the criteria, are eligible for the PUP. The eligibility for the PUP includes self-employed people, but there must have been a self-employed PRSI contributor, and checks to ensure that are carried out by the department. I'm told the majority of claims are processed quickly and without the need for engagement with the customer before a payment commences, and the department says it's not aware of any particular problems in processing claims from any particular sector. There is flexibility provided to self-employed people receiving the PUP to take up occasional or intermittent work, and they can still retain their PUP payment. This measure has assisted people to maintain their business during the pandemic and provides that a person can earn up to €960 from self-employment over an 8-week period without losing their PUP. In recognition of the impact of these new public health restrictions on workers, as I mentioned, anyway, so I'm just repeating myself there, but in total 55,300 PUP payments are being issued this week, of which 3,800 represent new applications received in the last week as a result of the restrictions introduced on the 7th of December.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Okay, well, I noticed the Minister for Arts, Culture and Tourism coming in. Now, can I just, as she's here, the musicians, the entertainers and the performers, the jobbing ones, on the ground, the grassroots, have been appealing, Minister, for a meeting with you to explain the particular difficulties that they are facing, the anomalies, the inconsistencies, the refusals. Yeah, okay, well, as I talked to them this morning and they still felt there was no movement. All right, a lot of them are being denied, and whatever the department are telling you, Taoiseach, I am telling you they are being refused on spurious grounds around PSRI contributions which they couldn't possibly show. If their gigs have collapsed for December, they're being asked in for an interview and told you've got to prove that you had those gigs. Now that means going around to every single venue and getting letters saying, yes, there was a gig and it's been, how do you prove that with a week to go to Christmas? Like, this is the sort, or people who were on a lower payment because they were phased down on the PUP payments, and so they were on that lower payment, and then somebody else who comes in after December the 7th can get the 350 payment if they can get it. So they're in the exact same situation. One person is getting 350 and another person is getting 203, even though they're in exactly the same situation. It is cruelly unfair. So we're asking for consistency, and we're asking for the Department of Social Protection not to be putting hoops in front of people in advance of Christmas. Take the same attitude you just displayed towards the EWSS, which is get the money out first, tie up the anomalies later, and will the Minister for Art please meet with the MEAI before Christmas to discuss the problems that the musicians and the entertainers are facing. They're telling me that there's been no movement.
Please.
Deputy, that there do need to be some controls and there do need to be checks and balances. This is ultimately taxpayers' money, and as you'll know from the published reports, there have been very large overpayments with respect to PUP, and also there has been fraud in relation to the PUP, and this is taxpayers' money. We have to make sure that that we minimise that. And among the checks and controls is asking people to show evidence that they were self-employed. And anyone who's self-employed makes PRSI Class S contributions and should be able to show that. But I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, that there are people who work in the nighttime economy, have had the devastating news in the last few weeks that sector of the economy is being shut down again until we don't know when. We need to make sure that they get the money they need to get through Christmas and thereafter, and I'll certainly take this up with Minister Humphreys. And again, if you want to pass on those individual instances to my office, I'll make sure she gets them.